Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Munira. I am here with Marquez Mosher.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Marquez. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.
So I'm Munira Zahabi, and I'm on a mission. Things are changing because the family unit isn't what it used to be together. People today have a growing need for support. The support that used to be found within the family structure and local communities, it doesn't usually exist or no longer exist. So filling this gap are a lot of amazing people who add value to people in so many different ways. My mission is to expose these people to the world through interviews that people can see what these people do and how they can help other people. My guest today is Marquez Mosher. Hi, Marquez, again. Thank
Hello.
you for your time. And how can I ask everybody the same question? So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I get that question a lot, actually. So I've summed it up into a couple different phrases. I consider myself an eternal optimist, a hopeless romantic, a positive thinker, individual realist, and all of that kind of goes under the umbrella of being a social loner. So if you notice there's a lot of contradictions or seeming contradictions in those things, and that's exactly what I am, because ever since I was a little kid, I've grown up in many different social worlds. So it allowed me to have lots of different perspectives, and that's kind of what I've learned to embrace is about what I am, who I am, and how I go about things. Is that I look at things from different perspectives, and sometimes to my detriment, because I miss sometimes the obvious things that are right in front of me. But being able to see things from different perspectives allows me to have an easier access to empathy and be able to help other people kind of break free from some of the complacency that settles in. And that's kind of what I'm all about, is that I try to make sure that everybody looks and sees things from different perspectives. I like to challenge people, and sometimes that can be uncomfortable. So what I like to do, and with my kids, and you talked about family, and I have 4 kids, and they're all a little bit older, but they've gone through this. So for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, it feels like I've been, in that role with them, and now I just want to take the lessons I've learned and kind of be able to help other people with that same thing.
So what is it that you want? What is your passion, and what is something that you want everybody to learn?
For me, it's the ability to think for yourself. That's what it comes down to. Your engagement with the world, your engagement with yourself, boils down to 2 things, and that would be your decisions and your mindset. And those are things that can only be yours. And when we let other people influence us, and when we let other people, or the world, society, whatever you want to call it, take control of that, you lose your power. And that's the biggest thing I see, that I want everybody to be able to have their own opinion. It's okay if it's similar to someone else's, but as long as it's grounded in things that they believe in, or that you have been able to research or experience, that's what I want. I want everybody to be able to feel comfortable with themselves and making good decisions, and being able to realize that they're in control. They don't have to let the world dictate things to them. They can actually dictate things to the world.
So doesn't everybody have an opinion?
No, I've found that a lot of people, well, I guess the answer is yes, they have their opinion, but is it their own opinion? I find a lot of people end up thinking that they do what they think they're supposed to do. They do what they think their role is in life, whatever that is. I call it the mayonnaise theory. A lot of people will say like mayonnaise, and it means well, because you're trying to watch what you eat, be healthy, and so on. But nobody ever usually complains if the person doesn't actually put light mayonnaise on, because it tastes good. So most of the time, people are saying what they want. Drinking diet soda, for what example. Just people will do what they think they're supposed to be doing by the roles that they've been assigned, and they don't really think about, I don't really want diet soda, or I actually just give me my regular mayonnaise and I'll exercise a little bit more. they don't necessarily make the decisions themselves. They let someone else make it. And that's when you asked about, does everybody have an opinion? Probably everybody has their opinion, but is it their own? Is it something they've thought about? Have they actually thought, why am I thinking this way? Why am I making these decisions? Because a lot of that, of course, you're given as you grow up, when you're being taught and your upbringing and such. But at some point, I want to make sure everybody breaks away from that and goes and thinks about, well, why do I not like so-and-so, or why do I like something? And think about what that is to them.
So I asked you about opinion, right? But that's not what you're saying. You're talking about decisions and opinions. That's two different things.
Yeah, I see it. For me, I guess they're somewhat linked, because what your opinion is, what opinion you have, is usually going to dictate your actions and dictate what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. Mainly because it comes back to your mindset, and your mindset very much dictates what your opinion is towards whatever situation you're in. So that's why I always think things come back to, for me, is always about decisions and the mindset, because they go hand in hand. If you want to get where you want to be, you have to make good decisions. If you want to make good decisions, you have to be in the proper mindset. If you're not, the exact opposite will happen, and it ends up being a downward spiral where if you don't make a good decision, it puts you in a bad mindset. Then that mindset will turn you into more bad decisions, and you can either continue on a downward spiral or an upward spiral. So when you talk about the opinions and actions, that's how I think everything is tied together, just because what you decide to do and the actions you take is based on what opinion you have, what I call engagement, for that situation or the world.
So when you are talking to people and when you are asking them to make a decision, or having that mindset to make a decision, what exactly do you teach? And how do you help them go through that process?
Well, for me, a lot of it starts with just finding out what their background is, what their thoughts are, how they perceive things. I call it somewhat of a challenge at the first, because it'll challenge their views and their viewpoints. It may either just confirm what they already are, or it may actually make them jog a little bit out of a little bit of complacency, where they realize, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. And so some of the things that I do, if I've got some modules, as I call them, where it'll be different acronyms, because I love acronyms for some reason, and those things will be triggers. You've got, like, for mindset, I've got 5 levels of hope, but the first one being honesty, optimism, perspective, and empathy. That would be having hope, HOPE. And you can go from there. I have a CPR-X, where the CPR-X is how many times you need it, but it can be CPR, meaning when you're presented with a choice, then you're going to have potential repercussions from that. You are going to have possibilities. You're going to have to clarify to see what the primary reason is for that decision. So there's little things like that that can help people break out of their normal patterns, so that they can think about, well, why am I making this decision? What's going to come of it? What are the potential repercussions that could come from it? And then ultimately, what is the personal responsibility that I'll have to take? So there's these, like I said, I call them modules, and I have a whole bunch of them, 4C success and different ones. And that's what helps people get out of their routine. Because the one thing that I really dislike is complacency. And I think that's at the heart of a lot of people's frustrations and unhappiness, is because they just get used to doing something, and it's just easier for them to keep doing it than it is to break away and try something new.
That's true, because new habits are formed. They take harder to do, but the old habits are hard to kill, right? Because
Yeah.
it's something that you have to break away from. And even simple things like washing your hands or brushing your teeth.
Yep.
Because when you go to the dentist, they'll tell you a different way to brush, but you keep going back to what you know.
Yeah. It's actually, it's funny you said that, because we just switched over from the regular toothbrush to an electric toothbrush, and I kept damning myself because I'm still trying to scrub away, and I'm like, okay, I got to change this. Something as simple as brushing my teeth, I have to think about and change the way I'm doing, because otherwise I'm going to end up with a mouthful of blood from all of the pokes that I'm giving myself. So
Yeah, and I spoke to a few weeks ago. I did a interview with a dentist, and she is a leadership coach on dental hygiene and stuff. And what she said was, you have to hold your toothbrush brush at an angle
Yeah.
to be able to do that. And I was like, okay, because I too sometimes, even though I've had the electric toothbrush for a while, I still revert back to brushing. And
Uh-huh.
no, just hold it so it'll do its thing. And I'm like, okay. And so I know what you're saying, because every time I brush my teeth, her words echo in my listening, but you still want to go back to what you're doing.
Yep.
And so
And that's
I,
just the complacency. Yeah, that's just the complacency that sets in. And if you're not, well, it took an example of going to the dentist or the interview and stuff that it broke it out. And that's kind of what I feel I want to do, is be able to, what I call challenge, and say, well, did you think about it from this perspective? And that's where, for me, it's very natural, because I'm always looking at things from different perspectives. So it's much simpler for me to ask someone, well, did you think about it from this perspective? And if they're open to it, most of the time they can see something different. If they're not, well, then of course it makes things a little bit more difficult. And it's all in the presentation on how you go about having someone, when you challenge someone in almost anything, it produces different types of responses. Some people will welcome it and some people won't. And so it's a very fine line to know which situation you're dealing with.
so how do you help people? I mean, is it just a one, how do you help people change their mindset to make that positive decision? Is it just a one time deal, or is it something that you have to keep working at that?
Well, it's both. I mean, you always have that initial change, and then there's usually the follow-up in order to make new habits and such. In my case, most of the time when you get someone, and it's something that goes back to my corporate career, is that when you get someone to look at something from a different perspective, they'll almost never see it the same way again. So when that snowball starts, it helps them not only in that one instance, but if that instant turns out really good, they're going to want to recreate that. And wanting to recreate that is the impetus for them to be able to then go, okay, maybe I can step back and look at this from a different angle, how, or get someone else's opinion on it. Once that initial break is made, and especially if it ends up being something very, very positive, then it's something somebody wants to keep doing over and over and over again. And at that point, it becomes just more of a support where, they may have questions, or it may be, hey, I looked at it from this perspective. Does this make sense? And then I can, give my opinion, or, tell them, follow up with, well, yeah, that makes sense. And what about this? And it's all about almost a brainstorming session with whatever decisions are going on in your life. And that initial one is the hardest one, because the initial one is the one where they may or may not be looking for it. But I find that we can all see things from a different perspective. We can all see things from someone else's viewpoint. And when we do, it kind of opens up a whole host of opportunities to be able to move forward, change. And like I said, sometimes people forget, it might just be a confirmation of what you already were feeling. It doesn't always have to be something different. You might have been on the right track all along, but this builds the confidence to know that you were on the right track. That's what the challenge part of it does.
That's awesome. Thank you. So let me ask you, you said something that I was thinking about that for a second. You said that you were in corporate world.
Yes.
And I know now that you are working on your own business and going to school. So can you share why did you make that shift? I mean, that decision that you made.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's actually, I bounced back and forth in and out of it. And the original reason that I got out was kids. I wanted to be around. The situation just dictated that if we wanted to have parents around, it was going to have to be me. And so I bounced out of the corporate world. And this was actually late 90s. Yeah, late 90s, really, when I was growing up in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley. So it was a very, very busy time. I actually worked at Intuit, which is the maker of Quicken and QuickBooks and TurboTax. So it was actually, I was in the middle of all that tech stuff, and it was very exciting and energetic and everything. But but yeah, we had kids, and I just decided this wasn't going to be put the same amount of effort into that and rise that corporate ladder. I just wouldn't be home, and or at least as much as I wanted to be. So I decided not to. And then a few things happened. I was able to get some money, and I was able to start my own business, and that kind of began my trek of being outside the corporate world. But I also realized sometimes I missed. I missed that structure. So I would consult and I would bounce back and forth, back and forth. And I did a lot of operations with different companies, tech companies, health companies, and those all helped formulate where I am now, because my idea as a leader, as a manager, as whatever they want to call it, was essentially to eliminate the obstacles that were in people's way so that they could do their jobs. And now it's the same thing. I'm just trying to help people see what those obstacles are so they can eliminate them so they can get where they want to be. Same concept, just different outcomes. In the corporate world, it was usually about a project or some sort of thing that we had to get done, presentation, product launch, whatever the case may be. Now it's about, okay, helping people, whether it's in their personal, professional, or organizations, because I still will work with them. Well, where are you trying to get to? Are you trying to better yourself? Are you trying to better your career? Are we trying to get more business? And it's the same philosophy. Okay, how can we see things from differently so that we can do things differently and clear out the obstacles so that you can get where you want to be? And the only way you can do that is by looking at things from different perspectives. Because of course, I don't remember who said it, but you can't. I think it might have been Einstein. I'm not sure, but you can't solve the same problems with the same thinking that created them. So, or something to that effect. That's paraphrasing it, but so you always have to think of things from differently, and that's what I'm good at. That's just something that I've learned to embrace. It wasn't always that way where I felt comfortable with it, but now I'm quite comfortable knowing that, yeah, I'm going to see things differently, and that's okay. That's fine.
And it's always the same, right? Because if you look at things in a different perspective, I mean, if you go to a mountain and you see a view from here and a view from here, but you're looking at the same tip, but the view is different, right? So that
Yeah.
perspective changes. But when you go in there and when you help people change their perspective or show them that a different perspective is needed, do you often tell them what you see, or do you have them find out what, figuring it out for themselves?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It usually depends on the situation. If it's more of a personal thing, then I don't want to necessarily be the one to be pointing it out. I talk about how a lot of people, a lot of coaches, there's a trend to do it one of three ways. Really, they either shock you with certain things. They try to, I call it charismatic bully you, where it may work out in your favor, but it's kind of that charismatic bully. And then there's an oversimplification. And I try to not do any one of those three things, where I want to use more of intuition, education, and logic. I want to persuade you to see things. So if I feel adamantly that I feel like I know where you're going and I see what the obstacle is, I'm going to try to persuade you to see it the way I see it. And if that works, then you'll have discovered it on your own. It won't necessarily be I discovered it or that you're following me. Now with organizations, sometimes it's no. It's much more black and white. It's like, this is it. This is what I see. This is what you need to change. And that's usually what they want. They don't necessarily they don't want to go through a transformation so much. But when it's a personal or kind of professional development, then it is all about helping the person see it on their own. And it's kind of like what you do when you do have kids, where you want them to maybe think it was their idea so that they get confidence. And it's the same concept, that you want to have that person feel that they're a part of it, because if they feel like they've been a part of the discovery, then it may have a better chance of sticking. And it also, quite honestly, it allows you that if they don't get it right away, then maybe I have to challenge myself and rethink, maybe I'm missing it. Maybe I'm missing where they want to go. So it allows for a two-way communication.
And so when you work and consult with bigger companies, I know individuals may take one or two tries, and sometimes they take longer. But when you're consulting, do you need to go into an office a few more times before you have them see your perspective, or is it just a one-time use?
It's usually repetition because, like anything, it's breaking a habit. It's wanting to make sure more than anything when change happens, it's better to do it in baby steps. It's better to do it in increments. So sometimes it's just the first step is just to discover what's going on, what's the problem, and then building from there. Now I might see it, or whoever brought me in, or whoever's trying to do it. We may be on the same page, like the executive team may be on the same page that we've already agreed where we want to go. But you have to also make sure that you can bring everybody along because the buy-in is what's most important. And that's not always the case. And sometimes you're not going to get it all. But whether it's personal or a company, it's always about making the person feel like they're part of that growth, because otherwise it doesn't feel like they're doing it. It feels like someone else is doing it for them. And that's not going to help them. In the long term, as soon as you're gone, they may fall back into old habits, and that doesn't help anybody. So I like to hopefully get them involved and make them, that's why I say persuade. For me, that's a little bit easier because my background is in sales and marketing. So I'm already feel very comfortable with quote unquote selling them this idea. What I'm doing now though is coming from a very good place, and it's something that they've asked for or that they are looking for, so that I'm actually not selling them, I'm just persuading them to see it from what I think they want. And that's actually a very important distinction, is that it's not what I see for them, it's what I see that they want. And it's something that's very difficult for, this is the part where it's very difficult for a lot of people, because when they ask, well, what would you do, Larry? I mean, Marquez. And it's kind of like, well, what I would do is different than what you would do. Now, are you asking me what I would do, or what I would do if I was you? Because I can put myself in your shoes and say, I think it would be better to do this, which may not be what I would actually do. But they're not asking really for me. They want to know what is best for them, and I want to give them what's best for them. So that's a hard distinction, because not a lot of people can step outside themselves and actually think about what's best for someone else and then go through that. Mainly because, if someone asks me what I think, it's like, okay, sure, I'll give you my opinion. But they're not really asking what I think, because what I think isn't going to help. My background is different. My perspective is different. My experiences are different. It's not the same thing. So we got to get in their shoes. And sometimes that's what I find when I look at some of this industry and I look at other people and stuff. It's not cookie cutter, but it always seems like they're just giving what they think that person should do because that will always work. And it's just not the case. That's the realist part that I talked about, being the independent realist. That's not the case. You have to look at it from situation to situation. And although you'll have a formula of what you think is the best, you have to make sure that the reality matches, because if it doesn't, it's just all going to fall apart. As soon as they leave the conference, as soon as they leave the seminar, as soon as they leave whatever, it's just going to fall apart, because they're not, they go home to their life and you go home to your life, and it's not the same. So that was a long answer for that, but that's you can tell that's part of one of the things I feel passionate about. So
no, but that's true, because and that's what we want, right? Is the where is the passion? Where is it that where can you bring the most value to people? And I see that a lot, because sometimes in a split of a second you can make a decision. Like if you went, it's easy to make a split of a second decision if you're at Costco and they give you those little testers and you go buy a big bag, right? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's no brainer. But those kind of decisions are made immediately. They happen so fast, and we don't have to think about that. But the fact of the matter is that when it comes to self, or creating the self-development part, or creating a decision for ourselves, for our betterment, it could be our personal betterment or for our companies, we take longer, and we take longer as executives or decision makers. We usually take longer because we don't see the problem
right
in that way, but we want results. And then we find out that we try to figure out, because I've been in corporate world, and we realize that people, we as decision makers want instant results. We live in this world where we want instant stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's awesome that you do this because it helps people understand that a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
I have worked in hospitals and in companies where in lots of hospitals, I should say, and I used to be a consultant. But when I worked, we used to have consultants come and tell us what we should do, and they wouldn't ask us what our opinion was or what how we saw it or how we saw the end product.
Right.
And that was the other thing. And I understand most of it that you work in IT is because that's the issue, right? Because the the IT people will create something, but they haven't got the vision of the person that's going to use it.
Right.
So I understand it because I used to work in IT as well. But it's so hard for those people who are creating that stuff to understand what this person wants.
Hmm. Yeah,
Sometimes
that's
you just want to pull your hair out.
yep, absolutely. Because I have actually I've worked at a technology company, and I've worked at like that in the healthcare area, and the two are so different. And it's the same thing, like you said, when they would come in, or consultants and such would come in and say, "Oh, okay. Oh, I see your problem. Okay, you need to do this." Okay, that's great. They may be even right, but that's only half the battle. The presentation of how you're going of what it is, and then the implementation. There's so many other steps to it, and if you're not thinking about how is it they're going to be able to best do it, then it's a waste. I mean, it just is it, and the only way to do that, like you said, is to get your feedback. Like, you have to ask the questions. You have to understand. Okay, this is your background. When you leave here, you're going to what situation? Are you a single mom? Are you, are you going to a house full of kids? Are they tweens? Are they teens? Are they little kids? You have lots of family around when all those factors go into, okay, so you'd like to get somewhere. You'd like to do something more. The company, whatever it is, well, okay, tell me a little bit about you. So I may have already realized that, okay, the best way for you to do this is, you need to, whether maybe it's go back to school, or you know what, actually it's just, you just need to be able to stand up for yourself because you don't have the boundaries of it created, or whatever the situation is. That's great. Now, how are you going to do it? And that can't be from my perspective. It can't be from me with having, four kids, but almost all of them out of the house, when you've got three kids and they're all under 5 years old. That's that is going to be totally different situations. And a lot of people don't necessarily think of it that way, because that they, like you said, they just come in going, oh, okay, you need more time to yourself. Well, this is how you do it. Well, it doesn't work. Those 5-year-olds aren't going to let you have that time. How are you going to be able to do it? Oh, what is their nap schedule? What is, and you can go into that, in whether it's the personal, professional, whether it's kind of like, okay, I worked with somebody who was trying to just get an advancement in their career, and they were on a great track already. They were already asking questions, the interviewers, mentors, and they just kind of needed a little bit more direction. And it's all about, well, what's your schedule? What time frames do you have? When are you going to have time to do this? Because a lot of people say, you know what, I'm going to write a book. That's a great one. Everybody says, I'm going to write a book. Well, writing a book takes time. How are you going to block that time out? Well, I'm not sure. Okay, what's your life like? And then you have to step into their shoes. And again, it comes back to perspective. What is their life? What is their engagement with themselves and their life from their perspective? So that's why I do try to keep things very centered and focused. And I almost shy away from calling myself a coach, just because even though it may be coaching and it may be training, it's so focused on your decisions and the mindset behind them. And then pretty much that's it. And everything comes down back to that. So that's one thing that I kind of differentiate myself with, is that, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge your views. I'm going to challenge your viewpoints. And that's going to dictate everything else, because we'll see how you respond. That gives me an insight to how your mindset is. And then from there, I tell my kids, I've actually told other adults, though that was a different story, is, you had two ways to handle this. You could have looked at it from, hey, you know what? This is great. I'm going to have a positive, okay, great, or you could look at it from, oh, great. Here's another thing I have to change. Here's another thing I have to do. You had two choices as to which way you handled it. Which one did you really think was a better one? And yeah, when I've done that, it's sometimes when I'm just like out, when you're getting dinner or something. I've done that before, and the person wasn't always so welcoming, but I was kind of like, you're being a jerk to the server. It was kind of like it was a situation where they were just not being very nice, and I'm like, you don't have to be doing this. So needless to say, my wife wasn't exactly happy about that, but I'm like, you know what? The person was getting, they were just kind of berating the person. And I'm like, this isn't their fault. That's just unfair. So I tried to challenge them a little bit, and it worked out okay, but you got to be careful. Sometimes it's just not appropriate situation.
I think you're always like me, because we are always on the. I've gone through the Lean Six Sigma training, so I'm constantly looking for things that can be done easier.
Yeah.
Right. And so and I look through that, and my kids tell me, you need to switch that off right now. Mom, switch it off. You can't be telling a restaurant how to run their business. Hey, but I said, but if I can tell them and they can help somebody take lesser steps to doing their task, not steps as in walking steps, but just doing their tasks the way they're doing it. Let it be streamlined so that it's easier for them.
Yes.
And so my son says, but that's their restaurant. Well, I said, but then I can call the manager and say, this is what I observed. Would you like for me to come and do a session with you?
Yep. I totally get that. I'm constantly on, and you're absolutely right. And it's even makes it worse because we have a background of like trying to make things more efficient.
Yes.
My operations, so it's always there. And I ultimately think it's a good thing, because we can bring that to whatever situation it is. And sometimes it's just okay, I could, but I'll be quiet and I won't say anything. But a lot of times in my head, it's still thinking about, if they could do this and stuff. And some people, a lot of times when you're thinking out loud, or when you just mention it to whoever I'm with, sometimes like smaller restaurants and stuff, they hear you and they're like, I had one person, and it was a deli, that asked, I heard you say something. What did you mean by that? And it started the conversation of, well, I was thinking that you do this, you do this, you could probably save a step. And they were very grateful. You're absolutely right. They were actually, and those are the people that were looking for that.
Yeah, they don't know how to ask or who to ask, right?
Right.
And so I tell my kids the same thing. It's like they don't know who to ask, or when to ask, or who to ask. It's like they're looking for a solution, but they don't know. But if we can just make their life easier. And he goes, you're never going to get paid if you give them free advice. I said, you know what? I'll give them my card, and somebody else who needs this advice, they'll give my card to them and say, she helped me, call her.
Exactly.
So that's how it's going to be.
That's exactly it. And I find that I find that a lot, where it's just, a lot of times it's just the questions, and I don't mind it. I love it. I get those a lot, where it's just a question, and especially social media is great for that. And it feeds both. It's kind of like I'm helping, and then I'm also, by helping, it makes me feel good. That kind of, it feels good to help someone else. So it helps both ways. And then sometimes it turns into something more formal too. So.
Well, you never know. So it's good to be on all the time, but sometimes with the kids around, sometimes you just have to just bring it down a little notch lower. But I never turn it off. I just bring it a few notches down. And then I write it. I mean, I've had businesses come through, because I've gone into their establishments and then written out this, found the manager and said, can I have a few minutes, or can I call you back? And it's turned out to be, I've written down the points, is when I visited your establishment, these are the things that I noticed, but I can help you streamline these, because it's creating extra work for your people.
Yep.
And it's not creative. And so there have been people who have come in, asked me to come in and show them how to streamline stuff, and then, given me a check for that, or at a car place, they do my oils for free.
Exactly. See, and it's funny, because all those things come down to, even like what we just talked about, is decisions. It's making a different decision in order to make it more efficient. So, and the only way that they decided to make a different decision is when you presented a different, basically, mindset, a different way of doing it, a different perspective. So that's when I say, sometimes people will be like, oh, you say you don't oversimplify, but isn't that what you're doing when you bring it down to those two things? I'm like, That's not oversimplifying. I'm just focusing because everything comes back down to those two things. The thoughts you create is a decision. The actions you take is a decision. You know, what the words you say is a decision. All of those things derive from how you're feeling, and that what you're feeling is your mindset. So if the oil change place or wherever the case is, it's always just having going, hey, did you think it from this perspective? And like, oh no, I didn't. And then, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. And that it's changed their mindset. And now they make different decisions. And you know, hopefully it's good. So because you know, not everything goes good, but you know, as much as possible, that's what we'll shoot for.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Marquez. I really appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for joining us on this call. For those people who are watching, take Marquez's advice. You have to, for your mindset to change, you have to make a decision, and that's either going to be a bad decision. I'm not saying all of them are going to be bad, but you have to look at the perspective and the options that are presented.
Yep.
So, you know, listen to people's perceptions is all I'm going to say, is because not everything is going to be right for you. However, if it is something that you can implement in your lives, go ahead and do it. Marquez's information is going to be on the YouTube channel that I'm going to share. And then there's a way to connect with him as well, and connect with me. For those of you watching, please subscribe, like, and share this video. And I appreciate your time, Marquez.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it too.
Thank you. Bye.